Hello and welcome to Savannah Chatham's Community Awareness. My name is Eddie Rahx, and today I have Michelle Kay here visiting with me, and we are going to talk about something that's very dear to both Michelle and my hearts. This is the development at Norwood Stables. Michelle, thank you for being on the show.
It's my pleasure.
So tell me, what we're talking about here is the Norwood Stables property. Can you give us a little background of this property that's on Norwood?
Certainly. The property is 7.22 acres. It's actually 2 lots that have been combined together. It runs from Norwood Avenue all the way back to Lansing Avenue between Leicester and Hunt Club Court. And it has been operated as a commercial horse riding facility for the last 40 years, approximately.
Awesome. So I understand there's like one house on there now, but there's 2 properties. So,
right.
So what they've done is some guy has come in and purchased this, or a land holding company.
That's correct. There's a commercial development company called Development Associates Incorporated, and they have come through and purchased the property August 17th of last year.
Okay, so I understand they paid like double the value of this property. Is that true?
That's correct. The property's appraised market value is $407,000. They paid $830,000 for it.
So what's the point of that? So they keep single family dwelling buyers from coming in there.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's terrible. So what are they talking about putting back there?
Well, the property is split zoned, so part of the zoning, the front approximately 3/4 of the property that faces Norwood is zoned for 2 family houses. And that means they could put 1 family or 2 family houses on there. The back quarter of it is zoned for single family homes only, and it does have to conform to the environmental overlay standards, which does bring down the density that they can put there, but just a little bit. So they're looking to put at the back side of the property, which will back up to Lansing. It's going to be a cul-de-sac. That'll be the end of the cul-de-sac. There will be 8 single-family homes back there. And then there will be another, I believe it's 22 or 23 lots going forward towards Norwood. And each one of those lots will have a 2-family dwelling, or a 2-family structure on there. So it'll be two 2-story townhouses right next to each other all the way up to the front of the property, where there will be 1 more single-family dwelling where the current house is sitting. That will be removed, and they will erect another structure there.
Okay, so they're kind of like duplexes then, but 2-story duplexes.
Mm-hmm. There will be a total of 54 dwelling units on that property.
That's a lot of people. So what's the problem? Because now a lot of people would say, so?
Well, I think that several neighbors and myself share the feelings that Sandfly and Herrick Hall and Lakeside Park, this whole area, has a semi-rural, low-density residential character about it, and a lot of the people that live around here care very much to retain that character in the community. And another big concern for many neighboring residents is the tree cover that is currently on the property. They are going to almost entirely clear cut the property of the trees that are currently there. I think they're saving 4 major trees towards the middle of the property and then 3 smaller ones towards the front, and that's it out of the hundreds that currently sit on this property.
That is an issue across this county. The removal of trees. We see way too much of it, and some of these trees are 300-year-old trees. They're beautiful, majestic oaks, and it's sad to see so many of them disappear just for these low-quality dwellings. I mean, duplexes. It doesn't even. I mean, what kind of construction are we going to get there? It's really sad to see this happen. In fact, this is a problem that's been in this neighborhood for some time. We have seen several new neighborhoods pop up from single dwelling properties, and they just build an entire neighborhood on it. And like you said, it completely changes the character of the neighborhood. So I guess the news is all over this, right? They're talking about it on the news, or?
The Savannah Morning News ran an article after the first MPC meeting, and then we were also approached by a reporter from WSAV who did a story concerned primarily with the removal of the trees on the property, not so much the development, but just the tree removal portion.
Wow, well, it doesn't seem like enough. I talked to Sissy Ron, and we're going to have her later on in the show, but she was concerned about water pressure and other, like, I guess what you call infrastructure concerns. What is this going to do with the traffic? I just can't imagine.
I don't know what will happen with the traffic. I think that it's obvious that if there are 55 new residences in this small area, that traffic is only going to do one thing, which is increase. I think that the next step needs to be a traffic study to be done on Norwood Avenue as well as Leicester Avenue, and possibly even Lansing, because I think that the county engineers really need to have a clear picture of the current traffic patterns as they are now before we add that many more cars to the road.
Yes. You know, I don't understand why these homes have to be built here when we already are seeming to be full over here. Like, the intersection at Sandfly is a mess in the afternoon. I mean, it's just a mess. The road there is half the time full of potholes. I mean, they come back and they fill them sometimes, but a lot of this is due to just overuse. I mean, this road was never intended, I think, to carry that many people, and now they would have to add in new lanes, I think, just some kind of something to alleviate that. You know, I would like to see maybe development head more out to the west end of the county, and there's plenty of area out that way to build many homes. You could probably get them at a lower price. I wonder why the push to put them on Norwood Avenue.
That's a really great question, especially when you take into account that this is not a project that this development company takes on generally. They're a commercial real estate development company. They don't develop residential areas. I believe that the one of the business owners of that company, Mike Kistler, said that 15, 20 years ago, he used to develop low-income apartment complexes, but that certainly hasn't been the focus of that company for quite some time. And he has continued to say, well, we offer great products, and go on our website, take a look. So I Googled Development Associates Incorporated, and if you go to their portfolio, it's nothing but office buildings and strip malls. There are no neighborhoods to show the quality of product that they're looking to bring to this area. And it does very little to inspire confidence in the part of the neighbors and residents in the surrounding community.
Wow. So, Michelle, how did you get involved to become like a spokesperson for this movement?
We got a notice in the mail several weeks ago from the MPC saying that there was going to be a meeting at the MPC to discuss the plans. And when the plans became available before the meeting, I pulled up the different files that the developer had put forward, and I was shocked, frankly. I don't have a development or civil engineering background whatsoever, but even to an untrained eye, I could tell that there were certainly many issues with what was being proposed. And so I went to the meeting and spoke on behalf of my neighborhood. My backyard actually is directly adjacent to the stable property. I look into the back side of the horse stables from my kitchen windows. So I went and spoke on behalf of myself, my family, and some of my neighbors at that meeting, and we've come together since then with other neighbors in the area, and I just happen to be the person who's willing to do some research and put some work in to talk about it.
Well, we're glad you did. And
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this to the attention of our community. That's what community awareness is about, is being aware of what's happening in your neighborhood. And this is something that should really be stopped. The kind of over-encroaching development that is going to swallow up the character and the happy homes of the people here.
Yes.
And I hate to see that. What would you like to see on that property? Just personally. I mean, I know that you're not the developer and you don't probably have the means to go develop that property.
Certainly
but
not.
What would the residents of this community like to see there?
I think that the answer to that is two parts. and really we have to ask ourselves, what is realistic to ask for? I think that nobody questions the fact that the developers own this property and that it is their right as American, landholders to build what they see fit on it. However, we just really would like for them to take the surrounding community more into consideration as they move forward with developing it. We would like to see the density come down a lot. They are proposing, like I said, 54 dwelling units in that small tract of land, which works out to be 7.6 dwelling units per acre. We would really like to see that number come down to 4 dwelling units per acre. If they were to come down on the density some and allow everything to just move apart a little bit more, a lot of the issues that follow that would be alleviated to some degree and would allow for things for problems to be solved more easily. The residents of this area, Southeast Chatham County, came up with a community plan in the early 2000s, and at the time that community plan was conceived, which was approved by the MPC, the average density in Southeast unincorporated Chatham County was 0.73 dwelling units per acre, which is a very far cry from 7.6. So we'd really like to see them come down on the density. I think that's the main issue. It affects the traffic, it affects the strain on the infrastructure, it affects issues with stormwater runoff, which is another big issue that we have. And if they were to move everything a little bit farther apart, then we could see them have the ability to take some of those existing trees that are already on the property, put fences around them, and preserve them so that they don't completely obliterate the tree canopy as they're developing that property.
I don't understand how they get away with this kind of stuff. I thought they make zoning as something that we're going to, plan by. And then just to change the zoning every time somebody buys a piece of property.
They didn't change it. It was already zoned that way.
Well, it wasn't zoned that way when I was a child out here. What they did was they changed it when they built Fox Chase and some of the others and just did that. And you think it's just going to happen once. But let me tell you, this is coming to a neighborhood near you. They will change the character of your neighborhood. And they will rezone and rezone and rezone and not stick to the original plans. Because these were single-family dwellings out here all along Norwood. They were large tracts of land with single-family homes.
Yep.
And I hate to see this just become a bunch of apartment buildings all up and down Norwood Avenue, but it could very well happen.
It definitely
Once you
could.
set a precedent, like you said, when it goes from 1.73 to 7, it makes a huge difference in the future. So then what is it to bump it up to 8 or 9 or 10?
Right, exactly. It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. So what's the future of the movement here?
The future of the movement is to continue research. I have a lot to learn about stormwater runoff infrastructure has been a big thing that we've been looking at because the property actually already floods when it rains substantially. And we have to keep in mind also that they're proposing a stormwater runoff system that includes a detention pond at the front of the property, which will filter into the current drainage ditches that run along Norwood Avenue. We have to remember, and it's very important to remember, that those drainage ditches flow across Norwood Avenue underneath it and straight into the Herb River. So we want them to be more conscientious with the quality of stormwater runoff infrastructure that they're putting in place so that when we take our children and families out onto the waterways in this area that are so dear to us, that our children and families are able to fish and swim in clean water.
You know, if you don't know this, even here on Ferguson Avenue, the Cedar Hammock Creek and they all used to be wonderful for oysters. Cedar Hammock oysters were highly sought after until all of the construction down here with these different causeways that they built, like the Diamond Causeway and the road over to Isle of Hope. When they build these solid roads, it destroyed that creek. And all the runoff from all these places those oysters are not what they used to be.
Right.
And the oyster industry was crushed. You can go down to the Pinpoint Museum, and I encourage anyone to go back there and see a glimpse of the past and how, it used to be. But they have killed that industry, and traditional employment for the people in this area has changed dramatically because of that.
Definitely.
So that's what happens with development, and it has to be curbed and just kind of, I'm not saying never build houses.
Right.
I'm saying let's do it the right way.
Yep.
And let's keep with the character of the neighborhood, and let's also consider the environmental impact that's going to
Absolutely.
happen out here, because this is a beautiful environment and we hate to see it disappear.
I absolutely agree.
Well, Michelle, thank you for being on the show.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
and I
you.
hope you'll come back and talk to us again as this story develops.
Certainly. Once we have word about when the first county commission meeting will be, we are going to keep an eye on the permitting process for the construction that is slated to begin as far as cutting roads and removing the trees. And so we will definitely be keeping an eye on that and keeping people updated. There is a Facebook page called Neighbors Concerned by Norwood Stables subdivision that we put a lot of information out onto to try to keep our neighbors and the general public informed on the development.
Okay, so you folks need to find that Facebook page and check this out. We're going to really keep harping on this and keeping you informed, making the community aware of what's happening out here on Norwood Avenue. Well, again, thank you, Michelle. And now we're going to go find Sissy Ron, see what she can tell us about this project. We reached out to Zelma Ron, who is also known as Sissy. She is on retreat in Daytona, Florida, and we were able to connect with her through Facebook Messenger. Hello, Zelma. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are a longtime resident of Norwood Avenue and have raised a family there. And we have contacted you because of your experience with infrastructure problems resulting from the overdevelopment of Norwood Avenue and the surrounding neighborhoods. Can you take us back to the beginning of these problems?
Yes. I moved onto Norwood Avenue in September of 1977. That is when they were installing the current water and sewer system in the middle of Norwood Avenue. At that time, all the westbound side of Norwood was 2, 5, 8, 12-acre horse farms, and the system was set up for that. Since then, as each one of the horse farms or horse stables or so forth have been sold, there have been cul-de-sacs put in to the tune of 38 units per cul-de-sac, and I don't know how many some of the other units are. Not only on Norwood, but the same system supports Isle of Hope, Dutch Island, Wally Island, a lot of La Roche. And since then, there have been sewer backups, other people's waste into my house.
Wait, so you had other people's sewage backing up in your home?
Yes, the public sewer system was backing up into my house. We were lucky and had a clean out on the outside and was able to just dump it into the ditch. And the ditch goes straight to the marshes, and what kind of stuff is going into the marshes, into our shrimp, into our oysters, into the other wildlife that is out there. It really upsets me.
Because these are estuaries or nurseries for the developing young shrimp and blue crabs that flourish in these creeks.
Exactly. And it's not filtered. It's just dumped in there and into the ditches. People's fertilizer and pesticides, and even the county will do herbicides and kill instead of cleaning out the ditch, they will do herbicides and spray the ditch, and then all those herbicides go straight into the marshlands.
So tell me about your concerns with the water pressure in these neighborhoods.
Luckily, I am on a well and have been on a well since we moved there. That well's been there since 1969. So I don't experience it, but I have neighbors that sometimes can't take a shower because the water pressure is low. And one of the biggest concerns I have is the fire departments on Isle of Hope. Now, I don't know if they're experiencing it on Norwood, but in Isle of Hope, the fire departments, they don't have enough water pressure in the fire hydrants to fight a fire. They have to take tankers to the fires to fight the fires. And the insurance companies are not allowing discounts to their participants because the water pressure does not meet their standards for the fire hydrants.
Michelle Kay brought up the issue of storm drainage. Could you speak to that for our audience?
That one affects me most because we all know water seeks the path of least resistance. And on my side of Norwood, which is the riverside, is lower than the road. So anytime the ditches are blocked, even the ditches on the opposite side of the road blocked or overwhelmed, the water comes across the road, down my driveway, directly into my garage. And it soaks everything in my garage. It has come within a quarter of an inch of coming into my house the last time that it overflowed. And it upsets me that they, even though we tell them about it, they don't do anything about it. But here's what they would do, and I don't want them to do that. They would, I'm going to say it, call it the west side of the road, comes across Norwood Avenue, directly into the river behind my house, and a pipe. And the pipe was only set up to withhold a little bit of water, not all the water that comes off of all the new cul-de-sacs and all the non-green spaces. Making that larger so more water can go out may reduce the drainage problem that we have, but what is it going to do to the marshlands? You just got more of that stuff going into the marshes that it's not meant to hold. It just frustrates me that, you know, and the ditches don't get cleaned properly, and you've got three infrastructures, actually four when you consider the traffic. You've got your storm drainage, you've got your sewer, you've got your water, and the roads. These were not designed for the current nor future structures.
So you're telling me that these four systems need upgrading?
Well, here's the issue that I don't think anybody understands. About 4 years ago, the county sold the water system and the sewer system to a private company because I think they knew that it was inadequate to service what they already had, and they wanted to get rid of a future problem. And it doesn't matter where the county owns it, where the private entity owns it. If they do upgrades, they're going to assess me for the upgrades. It is not my fault that politicians and bureaucracy has brought all this stuff in without having the infrastructure in place, or without setting something in place that the developers would have to pay an amount of money that would go into a repair and replacement account in order to upgrade the system when it was inadequate, which it has been inadequate for years. I paid for it when it first went in there, and I think the people who have added to the system should have been the ones to pay for the upgrades.
So who will pay for these upgrades?
That I would love to know who's going to pay for the upgrades, who their plans are, what's their future plans. In my opinion, until we have a written guarantee from each politician, county commission, MPC, who's voting for these projects to go forward, that they will personally pay for any damages to private homes that are already located in the area that's going to be affected by this project, they just need to vote no. Unless they personally are going to take money out of their pocket and pay for the damages to my house when the storm drains come back into my house and flood my house. Because every time you take down a tree, every time you move a spoonful of dirt, it changes the whole environment.
So you think the politicians should personally pay for their poor decision making? That's interesting.
Well, they're voting greed. They're voting, okay, what is this going to bring our tax base with these new houses and stuff? What is it going to bring, you know, all the fees and all the permits and the tax base of these new houses? This is going to increase our budget by so much. but they're not thinking about the damages it's going to cause to private property. It's greed. It all boils down to greed. When they paved the dirt roads, a lot of the residents were charged an assessment fee for the amount of footage they had. Is that what we're going to do? What are they going to do?
So it looks like you're saying the planned development of Norwood Stables would not only damage the environment, but cost local taxpayers a lot of money.
There's another issue. Not only are we talking currently about this development on Norwood, but from what I understand, they've already approved a new one over on the Roach that's in the same water and sewer system and drains into the same river. So how can, do we need to contact the DNR? Do they need approval from the DNR before they add this extra storm drainage to the rivers? Who watches over the health of the rivers and the marshlands? Who's gonna be able to speak for critters that can't speak for themselves? And who's going to speak for? That is our food chain. What's going to happen whenever it contaminates all that and we can't eat the food that comes from there? I'm just concerned that they just keep expanding.
Well, you have raised some really good questions, and thank you, Zelma, for being on the program today. I hope that we can find a resolution to these problems that will make everyone happy.
Me too. Thank you for all your help.